Military officials say Maute group members are staging attacks on troops from mosques. The Philippine military is considering bombing these places as pressure mounts for the Marawi crisis to end. Armed Forces spokesman Restituto Padilla says the use of mosques and madrasas as staging points for attacks on government forces is why they continue to control 10% of Marawi city. Some of these religious buildings are being used as sniper nests by terrorists, giving them good vantage points and protection. International laws prohibit attacks on places of worship and other cultural property. Padilla says ground commanders are instructed to do everything to avoid attacking the religious buildings, but he says there are exceptions to the rule. The 1954 Hague Convention for the Protection of Cultural Property in the event of armed conflict calls on countries to refrain from any act of hostility directed against such property. But such a rule can be waived in cases of imperative military necessity. This waiver can only be invoked if an officer commanding a force the size of a battalion or larger determines there is imperative military necessity to target a cultural property. Hague Convention rules also require the military to give advance warning when the cultural property will be attacked. Still in the Marawi conflict, terrorists wound 2 soldiers during the 4-hour humanitarian pause declared by the government on Sunday. The pause is an implementation of the peace corridor established by President Rodrigo Duterte. Presidential spokesman Ernesto Abella says 179 civilians were rescued from Marawi City. 6 members of the House opposition bloc questioned the constitutionality of President Rodrigo Duterte's declaration of martial law in Mindanao before the Supreme Court Monday. The lawmakers say Duterte's proclamation number 216 was bereft of sufficient factual basis and want the High Court to nullify it. Duterte declared martial law in Mindanao on May 23 following clashes between government forces and the Maute terrorist group in Marawi City. ALBAY Representative EDCEL LAGMAN, one of Duterte's staunchest critics, says President Rodrigo Duterte erred when he said in Proclamation number 216 that several buildings and institutions in Marawi City were attacked, occupied, or overran by the Maute group. Lagman adds that Malabang Police Chief Romeo Enriquez remains alive and was not beheaded by the Maute group, contrary to what Duterte said in his proclamation. The lawmaker also says the military denied the Marawi City Hall was occupied, contradicting an earlier statement by Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana. Lagman insists the imposition of martial law and the suspension of the writ of habeas corpus is flawed because Duterte acted alone without any recommendation from or consultation with the ranking defense and military authorities. Most public elementary and high schools all over the country on Monday opened their doors to 22.9 million students for school year 2017-2018. Only public elementary and high schools in Marawi City and 8 other districts in Lanao del Sur are postponing their school opening for a maximum of 2 weeks following the clashes that erupted between government troops and local terrorists in Marawi City. The Education Department will also roll out senior high schools grade 12 with a total expected number of senior high school enrollees in public schools at 1.6 million. Education Secretary LILING BRIONES says there was a shortage of 66,000 classrooms in 2016. But she says the country's shortage in classrooms has not reached crisis proportions. The United States on Monday gives the Philippines hundreds of machine guns, pistols, and grenade launchers to be used against the terrorist Maute group in Marawi City. The weapons are handed over in Manila via a decade-old American counterterrorism assistance program to the Philippines. The U.S. Embassy in a statement said, quote, "This equipment will enhance the Philippine Marines' counterterrorism capabilities and help protect troops actively engaged in counterterrorism operations in the southern Philippines." Terrorists flying black ISIS flags rampaged through Marawi nearly 2 weeks ago, triggering clashes with security forces. President Rodrigo Duterte quickly declared martial law in Mindanao to quell what he said was a fast-growing threat from ISIS there. But Duterte, who took office last year, has called for the withdrawal of American troops from the Philippines, while scaling down joint military exercises in response to U.S. criticism of his deadly war on drugs. Gulf states on Monday cut diplomatic ties with Qatar and kick it out of a military coalition. Qatar's Gulf neighbors Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates, as well as Egypt, all announced they were severing ties with Qatar. This less than a month after United States President Donald Trump visited the region to cement ties with powerhouse Saudi Arabia. A Saudi statement says the move was due to the gross violations committed by authorities in Qatar over the past years. It accused Qatar of harboring, quote, a number of terrorist and sectarian groups that aim to destabilize the region, including the Muslim Brotherhood, Daesh or ISIS, and Al-Qaeda. Qatar slams the decisions of the four countries, saying they were unjustified and aimed to put Doha under political guardianship. The Qatari Foreign Ministry says, quote, the measures are unjustified and are based on false and baseless claims. Qatar hosts the largest U.S. airbase in the region, which is crucial to operations against ISIS.